Good. So let's just jump over here really quickly. So these are the words we've sort of looked at today. They're the 5 words that we're going to go home and try and remember what they are. So we can just break it down really simply. Philosophy, all right, so that comes from the word philos and Sophia. So if you know anyone called Sophie, that name means wisdom, right? Sophie, Sophia means wisdom. Maybe you can tell them how much it doesn't suit them. So philosophy, and it's about the big questions, okay? That's just a really simple way to define what is philosophy. It's about the big questions. It's about the most fundamental questions, all right? Epistemology is about knowledge, okay? So what is knowledge? Can we know anything? Metaphysics is about the fundamental nature of reality. Okay, so it's about reality as such. Ontology is the one we're going to look at in a moment. And etymology, we've looked at etymology. That was the very first one I said. Etymology means the foundation of a word, or word history. So this isn't a philosophical term as such, but it's just one that we get from it. What's etymology? It's where does a word come from? History of a word, history of words. What's the history of philosophy? Well, it's 2 Greek words, philos and Sophia, joined together to make philosophy. Okay, so let's talk about ontology. Now this is a complex sounding word, and all it means is what exists. So ontology is a field of metaphysics. And you've got a number of things in your mind that exists. So you might, for instance, believe that you exist, okay? You might believe chairs exist. You might believe ghosts exist. You might believe aliens exist. And so they would be on your list of ontology. That's the things you think that exist, all right? So ontology is about existence. So I've got paper airplane here, and I want to ask you guys, how many things do I have here? 1. Good answer. 2. All right, where'd you get 2 from?
Well, we got the piece of paper and the aeroplane.
Excellent. Okay, so that's another good answer. I've got 2 things. All right. Who thinks I've got 1 thing? Put your hand up. All right. Who thinks I've got 2 things? Put your hand up. All right, we've got 2 things. So there's some good answers. What could be a way to synthesize those together rather than saying I've got 1 aeroplane and 1 piece of paper? You know, because I can. And the aeroplane's disappeared, but the piece of paper still exists, doesn't it? So what would be a way that I could synthesize those 2? So now how many things do I have? I've got 1 thing. You've got an idea. How can I
It's an aeroplane made of paper.
Very good. Okay, so we have an aeroplane, and it is composed of, that's the word we're going to be using, it is made of paper. All right. Another answer might be, you don't have an aeroplane, you don't have a piece of paper, you've just got 1 septillion atoms. All right, so paper is made from trees. Trees are a living thing. They're made predominantly of carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen. All life, they're the 3 main elements that make it life. And so it's estimated 1 A4 sheet of paper has 10 to the power of 24 atoms. So how many atoms is that? Just to it's a 1 with 24 zeros. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm not going to write them all out, but you can see how massive that number is. 1 sheet of paper has that many atoms. Suppose it. All right, so you might say, you don't have an airplane, you have a septillion atoms. You don't have a piece of paper, just a septillion atoms. Or you say you have 1 aeroplane composed of a septillion atoms. Very good. So what we're looking at here then is what we call a simple. So when we talk about composition, at the highest level of composition, we have the universe. We use that word to refer to everything that exists is inside the universe, okay? And the universe, we can say, we think all of space out there, is composed of galaxies. Does anyone have any idea how many galaxies there are estimated to be in the whole universe?
Maybe think of.
Yeah, it's between 100 and 400 million galaxies, all right? And so the Milky Way is 1 galaxy. That's the galaxy that we live in, right? And so within the universe is made up of galaxies, and we're in one of those, we're in the Milky Way. And what's a galaxy made of? Stars. stars and star systems. So our galaxy, the Milky Way, has, they don't know how many stars, but there's estimates. And in fact, on average, okay, they estimate again between 100 to 400 million stars within each galaxy as well. All right, so you can see between 100 to 400 million stars and in one galaxy, and then within the whole universe between 100 and 400 million galaxies. So that's just astronomical, the number of star systems, right? And then, well, what a star system's made of? There's a big burning ball of gas in the middle, that's the sun or a star in each system, and then it's surrounded by rocky or gaseous planets that orbit, right? So we've got planets. What are planets made of? Rocks. All the rocks have been sucked together by gravity. What are rocks made of? Okay, molecules. So let's make a distinction between what's a molecule, what's an atom. A molecule is a composition of atoms. So what's a classic example of a molecule?
H2O.
Very good. Water, it is composed of?
2 hydrogen and oxygen.
H2O. 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. So you can see we've started with physics, we've started with sort of, you know, what do we call it? Cosmological physics about the universe, and we've ended up at chemistry, all right? Or, H2O, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, atoms. What are atoms composed of?
Quarks.
Quarks, yeah, but let's not go there yet. There's one level above quarks. So we've got
Protons, neutrons, and electrons.
very good. All right. So we've hopefully seen the sort of the atomic model before, but we have what's called a nucleus, and the nucleus is made of neutrons and protons, and they're surrounded by electrons. So they're the 3 particles that make up an atom. All right. So even atoms are composed of smaller parts, but then even the protons, neutrons, and electrons are, like Cameron said, composed of quarks. And then supposedly, theoretical physics suggests things like superstrings, which are very tiny vibrating strands of strings. So if this has 10 to the power 24 atoms in it, and atoms have their components, they say an atom is mostly empty space. That if you go to Adelaide Oval and you sit in the stands, okay, and you're an electron, an atom is the size of a pea in the middle of the ground. Sorry, the nucleus. The nucleus is the size of a pea in the middle of the ground, and you're the electron all the way out in the stands. That's how much empty space there is, supposedly in atoms. And then quarks have been made of superstrings. And philosophy says, well, at some point there's, perhaps some most fundamental unit, whatever it is, that's what we call a simple. Okay, the most fundamental unit, the smallest unit, is a simple. And so ultimately everything is made out of simples. So we can think about it like babushka dolls, composition, things made of, right? So babushka dolls, the Russian dolls that they sit inside one another. 2 alternative theories. All right, Nikolai, can you read the first one for me?
Galaxy universe, no alternate symbols, smaller and smaller all around.
Excellent, all right. So gunky universe, that you can keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller particles. That there is no end to this ultimate symbol, this foundation of physical things. And Jake, can you read the second one?
Sure. No final composite, we think of the universe as all encompassing, but according to a junky universe, there is no end to composites upwards.
Excellent. So things just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So our universe, we think of the universe as encompassing everything, but there's no boundary to that. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. There's no final composite on the other end. Okay, so we've got composition, things made of things, and we've got simples. Very good. Okay, so let's ask this question here. Do chairs exist? Who thinks chairs exist? Raise your hand. Very good. Okay, so we're all on the same page there. Let's come up with a very simple definition of existence. To exist is to have a physical manifestation. That means it is somewhere physically. Chairs, here's one. All right, we can see it, we can touch it, we can smell it. If you want, you can lick it. All right, it exists. Unicorns, I'm going to propose, do not exist because they do not have a physical manifestation. You can dress a horse up as a unicorn, you can have a costume of it. That is not a unicorn, that's someone dressed up as a unicorn. Okay, I'm going to say chairs exist, unicorns don't. All right, who agrees with me so far? Cool, excellent. All right, so for something to exist, it has a physical manifestation. Do islands exist? Yep.
We could say no, because we can all be connected. It could just be one big, well, it's all just, what, mountains.
So there's room to argue about it. Very good. Yep, it could be. So let's say, what is an island? It's a land mass surrounded by water. Okay, if that's what it is. I've been to Kangaroo Island. Driven around the whole thing. You can drive down here. You can see some smaller islands off the coast. According to our definition, okay, to exist is to have a physical manifestation. Are there islands in the world somewhere? Yes. Okay, islands exist. Makes sense. Okay. How about in-cars? Who's heard of an in-car before? Who's heard of in-cars? What's an in-car?
Well, I've heard of them. I remember watching like 5 videos of them.
On in-cars?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else heard of in-cars? Does anyone want to take a guess at what an in-car is? It's in the name. In-car. It's in the picture. In-car.
It's a car in a garage. It's
Very good.
Space, yeah.
It's a car in a garage. Okay? It's not a car that's in at the moment, it's popular. It's a car that's in a garage. Okay, so do in-cars exist? Is there somewhere right now a car in a garage? In-cars exist. Alright? Who thinks in-cars exist? Alright, who thinks I just made up in-cars? They're not really a real thing. I just made it up. Yeah, I totally did. In-cars, I made them up, So islands seem a bit more real than in-cars, don't they? Islands seem a bit more real than in-cars. But an island, I said, is a body of land surrounded by water. An in-car is a car surrounded by a garage. Here we have a relationship between land and water. All right. Here we have a relationship between a car and a garage. Why are islands more real? Why do they seem more real? Why can you, yes, yeah.
Because it's like a physical thing made by nature. We didn't have to change it.
We didn't have to change it, yep, it's made by nature, so it's a natural thing. That's a great point, I think, that's a great point. All right, so let's see if we can,
What an island is, I guess, either a 1 or a 0, it's there or it's not. And in-car, well, it's there, but you can also take the car out and still have the car.
You can take the car out and still have the car, yeah. So,
there's still a car in the garage when you, so when you take away an island, there's only water.
Yep.
But when you take away the car from the garage, there's still a garage and there's still a car.
Yep, got a response?
There's something I was just thinking was a bit interesting. Before we had even had an idea of what a car or garage could be, right? Did the concept of an in-car still exist, even though we didn't know about it at the time? Or would it be...
Is it something we've created?
Yeah, is it something that we've created? Is that why we have the definition?
It's exactly what we're getting at, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this one a bit. So you said it's natural, all right? So in a moment we'll come across maybe a refutation of that one. Let's think more just about islands and in-cars. So island, I'm going to say, is a relationship between land and water. An in-car relationship between car and garage. But an island here, to respond to Harry, you said that you can take the car out. Well, sometimes islands are underwater. Like, for instance, Papua New Guinea and Tasmania and Kangaroo Island all used to be connected to Australia. Now they're separate islands, right? Because sea levels rose. And if sea levels went back down, then those would become islands again, you'd think. So that's similar to taking the car out the garage and putting it back, isn't it? And you might say, well, islands have properties, all right? Because they're above water, they have properties that they don't have when they're below water. So for instance, when they're above water, they can grow vegetation that exists on land. They can get rained on, all right? But cars also have properties when they're in a garage that they don't have when they're outside of the garage. They're protected from the weather. So let's try and think of some other ones. All right? In-cars certainly seem more real. Islands certainly seem more real. But have you heard of trogs? Yeah. A trog, you're absolutely correct, is the composite of a tree and a dog. It's a being. It exists, right? There's a physical manifestation of it. You can, if there's a tree and a dog and they're within, we don't have to set a limit of it. But right now, somewhere on planet Earth, is there a dog near a tree? Yeah, like you would say, almost definitely, statistically speaking. So do trogs exist according to our definition? Yeah, they do. But trogs seem absurd. Like, you think I made up in-cars, how about trogs? And we can't say, oh, well, trees and dogs aren't natural, because they're natural, aren't they? You know, an island's natural, cars, in-car and garage. So, do trogs exist? According to our definition, yes, but...
Well, you could say that they both exist naturally by themselves, but we are coming up with the idea of putting them together.
Combining them together.
Whereas an island is, like, we don't have to do anything, that's what it is.
Very good. Okay, so you're saying the trog is a product of the human mind.
Yeah.
That we're inventing that category. It's not a category that occurs naturally. Okay. So whereas with an island, is that a category we invent, or is that? Hey?
So we invented that as well.
We invented the category island. Yep.
We've termed it and given it properties.
Yeah. What? Why? Why would we? What? Yeah. Why? Is there a quick answer to that?
Because we need to be able to perceive it in our mind.
Yes, very good. Okay, because it's useful for our mind, right? It's useful to talk in terms of islands, whereas trogs aren't particularly useful, are they? It's not a useful category. All right, so that's a pretty good answer. So here's what I want you guys to think about. Okay, so islands seem more real than in-cars, and in-cars seem more real than trogs. I want to know, like, why? Why? And we've said maybe it's just a product of our mind. All right. This is what it's leading up to. Do composites exist? All right. So I think we've got sort of two ways we can go. Do composites exist? We can say yes. All right. Or we can say no. There's no such thing as a composite there. Really, things are just made of simples, whatever they are. Right, so we can say no, they don't exist, or we can say yes, composites exist. Okay. Then the question becomes, all right, do some of them exist, or do all composites exist? Because if all composites exist, then trogs and in-cars exist. But if only some of them exist, then maybe you can say islands exist, chairs exist. If every single composite exists, we have the composite of a chair and table. We have a table. Okay. We have the composite of Gemma and Mena. Jenna. Jenna. We have the composite of this room and you guys. You make it its own being. Everything composes if all composites exist. Any good answers to these questions?
I'd say, like humans, we define the composites that are helpful to us.
Yep. Cool. So that's I think an okay answer. So we're going to say they don't actually exist, but we pretend that they do because it's useful. All right. So that might be an answer. These things don't exist, but we pretend that they do. Okay. Yeah.
What if for some reason in the near future a dog under a tree meant something to somebody out there, and they started to create like sort of a spiritual meaning out of it, right? Would therefore that idea of a trog have existed before we even came up with the term, or is it still a composite? Is it a composite that exists now because it's useful? And if it was existing then when it was useful, did it exist in the past when it wasn't useful?
It's a good question. The trog's useful for me now for making a point, isn't it? So Mena?
Well, most when you process something, like you always process for trogs, for example, you just process, oh, there's a tree and there's a dog near it. You don't really mix the words together. Like as for island, you just, oh, that's an island. You already know it.
Yes.
It comes to your mind easily. But
Yeah, and you can look it up in the dictionary.
Yeah.
Whereas they don't have in-cars in the dictionary. I've been petitioning Oxford, but Yeah, good point. So, alright, so let's break that down. Composites exist. We've got either yes or no. Alright. Yes and no. Alright, there might be a temptation to say no composites exist whatsoever. Everything is just those little symbols, those little particles. There's one big area in this, I think. One big area in this. If you deny that composites exist, what else do you deny? Yeah, you deny your own existence. Because you are composed of carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen. And that's paradoxical for a number of reasons. It's because, well, what's making the declaration that they don't exist? You know, something has to have existence in order to declare it doesn't exist, as absurdly as that sounds. Alright, so there's some flaw here, isn't there? Like, to deny composites, say there's no such thing as a composite, is to deny your own existence. So then the question is, what separates real things from false things? Now, Aidan offered an interesting idea. He said, we define it, we break it up. Alright, and I like Campbell's thinking of jumping around in time and reflecting on time. So, according to modern scientific theory, how long ago did the dinosaurs live? When did they go extinct? 70 million years ago.
65 million years ago?
Between 65 and 70 million years ago. And when did they first sort of emerge, do you know? About 240 million years ago. So dinosaurs have been on this planet for a very long time. Before humans were there, before human minds were there to think about dinosaurs. Did dinosaurs exist as an object before our mind was there to... Yeah. Alright, so that's all I want you guys to sort of think about today. Alright, so we will sort of think about that for the... I'm going to stop this because I'm finished talking.